Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so pumped for today's episode to be wishing you a very happy new year. 2025 is here, and I will personally reveal this to you on the air that our first episode of the year is always handpicked by me personally because it's something that I want to set the tone for the entire year for us. And that's why today's guest, she is bringing something special to the table. This is someone who not only has incredible energy about the work that she does and how she shows up in the world, but let's face it, a new year, we're going to be talking about change. And today's guest is all about change in so many good ways. Let me tell you all about her. Her name is Renée Holder. She's the founder, president, and principal consultant of Janus Management Group. She is a certified change management and training professional, passionate about the successful transition of individuals impacted by small to large scale transformation. Renée has a rich experience supporting multi-year global HR and IT enterprise resource planning programs in Canada, Latin America, Asia, Africa, and across the United States. Through it all, she plans the journey to adoption from awareness to realization with a laser focus on each individual's experience during the transition. She's a writer, a speaker, a facilitator, and a change management fanatic who loves to see the emotional transition of people as they move from uncertainty to normalcy. Now, Renée hasn't put it in her bio, but as someone who's gone deep into her work, she doesn't even know that I'm going to tease right off the bat. Her book, I think, is so brilliant. It's called Beyond Devil's Forest, A Tale of Choice and Consequence. And I just want to tease you with a little bit of it from Amazon. It says, journey to a time gone by and relive the experience of the villagers you will meet through this clever tale from the fictional realm of Eckersley. See a society in crisis where change is imminent and decisions have life or death consequences. Beyond Devil's Forest is a metaphor for all of us as we consider change in our lives and how we fight or take flight. And I think that's such a perfect teaser for today's episode. I'm personally so excited about this one, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Renée Holder. All right, Renée, I'm so excited that you're with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Heck yes. It feels funny saying it to you today because obviously you and I are recording this in the past, but Happy New Year to you. And I will also say on the air, happy birthday on the day of our recording.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, Renée, you've got so much to live up to today because I've personally been excited about this episode, but you've got to take us beyond the bio. You do so much cool work. Who's Renée? How'd you start doing all these things?
Yeah, it's just such a weird kind of like full circle moment because, I think back at when I was a kid and I was like literally teaching a room full of stuffed animals, including my Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy. I'm aging myself for those who know. And I went from, doing teaching because it's kind of in the lifeblood of my family. My father's side of the family had principals and teachers. And then kind of like in high school, I really got into accounting and I thought I'd become an accountant. And when I got into university, I kind of, I'm very introverted, believe it or not. And I really thought that, accounting was perfect for that. But then I got a love for the arts, theater and music, and eventually really got so wrapped up in stage management that is, really, I think that really took me to another level because now the director is literally giving the show to me and I am then making sure that it flows and it runs perfectly. So, coming out of university, I thought, okay, stage management is my thing. And of course, one of my friends who was about 2 years ahead of me kind of said, there's about 7 stage managers in New York City. So it's hard to get a job. So I was like, okay, back to accounting. And I ended up getting my first job in the corporate world in the accounting space. And eventually that led to IT, HR, training, and led straight into change management. Almost by duress, because my director back in the day when I was at Nike, I was at Nike for 17 years, And she really said, Renee, you really have a knack for change management. But I was so in the training space that I thought, no, I'm good with training. Because again, going back to me teaching my little stuffed animals, I thought that was my destiny. And to think that over the course of time, over the different experiences and the different projects, I started trying to climb that corporate ladder, recognizing that there were some rungs that were missing. And I decided, you know what, we need a change. And how about we chart our own destiny? And that's when I started Janus. And now we're 10 years strong in the industry.
Yes, gosh, I love that overview, Renee. 10 years needs to be celebrated. I think as entrepreneurs, we need to recognize longevity because that's something that it's hard to do. And I know that with it, inevitably comes a lot of change, which obviously we're going to weave that into our conversation. But also, there's just been so many twists and turns that you couldn't envision. And I think a lot of people, when we set out to build our businesses, we think we know what it's going to be. But 10 years in, it's taken so many different twists and turns. So I'm excited to get into that. But we've got to start with change. Obviously, you talk about change management. A lot of people, I want you to define that term for a lot of listeners, but even before we talk specifically about change management, Renee, you have such a positive attitude towards change. Where does that come from? Not everyone loves change like you do.
You know what? I think it's actually, again, growing up because my dad, because of his work, we moved not a lot, but more than other kids would have moved. And we really learned to adapt each time. We always, and I think I credit my parents for doing change management when they didn't know it was change management. But it is, kids they're used to their neighborhood, they're used to their school, used to their friends, and then you move them to a whole other city. And now we have to start over again. But they always seem to mesmerize us with, we're getting a new home and we're going to decorate and getting our own bedrooms, or who's going to get the bedrooms, So it was always that. So they kind of teased us into preparing us for change. And I think that kind of resonated throughout my life where as I got older and I got into the business of change management, I was able to address, I'm like, that's what that was. That's what this was, and label it. So now that when I teach it or when I actually pull out programs, I'm literally using those same concepts from when I was a kid. So funny.
Yeah, I do love that, especially because that's such a tangible example that we've all either moved as children or we've seen the new kids in school every single school year. And it's something that, you just revealed to us that actually your parents were really successful in making change fun and positive. And so with that in mind, when we talk about change management within the business world, talk to us about some of those techniques and strategies, because obviously as kids, you can kind of say, oh, no, don't look over there. Look at all these shiny, new, exciting things. How much of that actually translates to the workplace?
Ton, because when think about it, I'll give you an example probably everybody should recognize. When your bank or financial institution is going to change the UI, the user interface, they send you an email maybe like a month or two in advance going, hey, guess what? In a month or so, we're going to change the website and it's going to do all these things. Here's why we're changing it. Here are the really cool things you're going to get. And then eventually over time, you get a week in advance, you get a little notification the night before and then the day of. And that's change management, right? It's the awareness way up and above. It's telling you why. It's telling you all of the benefits of what's going to be happening. Then it prepares you. So for example, if there's anything that's changing, they'll either give you a little short video on how to do it. And then, of course, they go live with the new platform. You log in the next day, and you're like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's right. They told me they were going to change it. And look, oh, yeah. And they have a video. You could play it. Now I understand how to get to my deposits. I understand how to, reconcile my accounts. So all these different things, that is change management. And the same thing happens when I work with any organization, whether it's technology change, process change, organizational change. It really comes down to what is the today, what is the tomorrow, and how do I get people from there to here? And it really comes down to understanding who all the stakeholders are, and people, stakeholders. Okay, leadership from the very top. It's middle management. It's I call them change champions or my super users. It's also then the end user population. And depending on the project, it'll be some of those people or all of those people. And the key thing is, how do you get that leadership, that change champion, that whole group of folks to really sing to the same hymn book and then drive everybody in the organization along with you to get you to the promised land or to the future state. So that change management is simple but complex, I like to say, but it's something that I think we all have to go through in some point of our life.
Yeah, really well said. And Renee, I knew you'd do this today. You've come armed with all the real life examples. I love that example of the website change because it's something we all experience as consumers, and we know inevitably as entrepreneurs, as business owners, that our business is going to change, just like you and I talked about a few minutes ago. So give us some of those examples. You rattled them off so effortlessly, Renee, that I want to go deeper into all of them. What are some of those types of changes that you see as someone who works with so many different cool businesses across all industries? What are some of those types of changes that we need to address and navigate through?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones, I'm a technology change gal. So working with a lot of organizations on changing their systems from, one system to the next. A lot of them are like to SAP. I've been working with SAP for a long time. So for those who know SAP, it's an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, which basically means all of your functionality running your business is all linked together, all the way from your sales, all the way to your shipments, to your receiving, to your accounting, and to the very end when you actually have your financials. And it's really, those are probably the most complex because, as you can see, it impacts so many departments across the organization. But the key thing is, at the end of the day, you need to have a through line of a message. Why it's important, I have done change initiatives where it's just literally changing a process. How do you just go from having garbage cans in your offices to no garbage cans now because we want to reduce paper and waste, right? And so how do you move people from that, knowing that they just throw the paper in the garbage every time, to all of a sudden realizing there's no waste paper baskets. Now it's walk your paper to a shredder, right? So things like all of these little moving an office, right? Moving from one end of town to another or to another city altogether. Who's coming? Who's not coming? From an HR perspective, what does the package look like to roll people off because they can't go? There's so many different instances where you have folks that will come along for the ride, and those will resist. And resistance is a huge part of the work that I do, resistance management, where you really need to get to the heart of the person to understand why they're resisting. So there are so many little pockets, but it's fun.
Yeah, you've led us there, Renee. So I'm just going to keep going down this path, the path of resistance, because it is the reality of any and all change. We could talk about, in theory, how great change is, and it brings a lot of benefits long term. But talk to us about that resistance. I love that term, resistance management. Yeah. Renee, how do you navigate those waters?
Yeah, let me give you an example. So I had somebody in one of my earlier change management projects where anytime that I would have like an all team meeting, just being able to let them know what some of the changes are that are coming, she would be at the back of the room, kind of, making, some small little comments to her neighbor. And I would hear it and it'd be disruptive, but I let it go once, then I'd be able to say, hey, any call outs from the back, and then she'd be like, no, it's okay. And eventually, at a break, I kind of pulled her aside and wanted to find out, what's going on, because there was a lot of visible resistance with what was going on. And resistance can show up in so many different ways, whether it's people not showing up to work people making comments at the water cooler, people saying this is never going to work because why? It didn't work the last time. This is the third time they've tried this project and it's going to fail again. But the biggest one for me, and this is the one where I do my sleuthing and I love to be able to get one-on-one with people, is the fact that the system that we're taking away is ingrained in who they are. And a lot of the times they are the go-to person on their team who knows the most about the system. So again, a new hire joins, you're going to send them to Sally because Sally knows everything. So now we're taking away the system that Sally has been the go-to person. So her identity has been wrapped up in this system and we're taking it away. So now the piece about the resistance management is, how do we get Sally involved? How do we explain to her that, you know what? Do you want to participate in the testing so you can see how it works first before the rest of your colleagues? So things like that are little ways to get people involved and to reduce that resistance. So there's so many different, ways of going about it, but resistance management is so critical, finding it as early as possible, trying to eradicate it. And again, I'm not the wizard. I can't do it always all the time. I might identify it, try some of my ways of getting people to turn around. But if they become disruptive and negative, I do have to pass that on to, obviously a leader in their team, whether it's their manager or what have you, because for the most part, I'm always coming in as a consultant, and which is why I love talking to people, because at the end of the day, I'm not their manager. I'm not going to squeal on anybody. But the key thing is to be able to pass on that there's a little rumblings on the floor that need addressing, and here are the different things we need to address. So I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to, how do you identify what the resistance is, find ways to get people involved and to understand. Resistance also comes from rumors, dispel the rumors, and then see what happens next. It's just really this finessing of your population to make sure that you don't leave anybody behind.
Yeah, gosh, I love those points and those insights, Renee, especially when you talk about people's identities are truly rooted in the things that they're used to. That's powerful stuff. So we need to recognize those are the strengths of the forces that we're up against when implementing change. So huge kudos to you, Renee, for making that point here on the air. I want to ask you this, because all change doesn't result in the things that we hope for. And I think of some high-profile business examples. I'll call out Apple. I have Apple everything, from phones to computers to all the things. Yeah. And so with that in mind, I don't know what year it was, and I can't exactly remember the iPhone launch, but it was the first year that Apple forced, I think it was the Beatles' new album onto every single iPhone. People were so upset with that, Renee, and it was a big thing. And Apple did walk that back. They admitted that they inserted this musical contractual agreement that they had to millions of consumers worldwide. So not all change we make most change, I like to think, in a good-hearted way, but not all change works out the way that we want. How much of change is that assessment of, did this achieve what we hoped it achieved? And also part of that, I'm curious to hear your perspective on it. Do we have to put ego to the side? How much of it is us saying, you know what, my ego has no place here. I want to assess this really for what it was versus what I hoped that it would be.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. Whenever I go into a new organization, and I'm a listener. I'm going to listen first. I'm going to watch activity. I want to see how the organization runs. A lot of times leaders will tell me, oh my gosh, everybody's so excited about this change. This is going to be a slam dunk, no issues. And then when you talk to the actual people, they're like, no, this is horrible. We are not happy. And I need to quickly start, getting my ducks in a row to reconcile those two truths, depending on who's saying it. But you still need to find a way to drive a message that's going to then drive a solution. And not every single, again, I have come up with so many different opportunities to do different things. I have clients who tell me, Renee, you know what? We want to kind of come out of the dark ages. We want to do something radical. And I love communication. I love training. I love using videos, and they're like, yeah, let's do that. And then as soon as we start getting to writing scripts and understanding what this is going to look like, they're like, well, maybe we should just send an email or something like that. I'm like, no. But again, they know their culture. They know what their organization can handle. When there's time to push back, I'll push back. But at the end of the day, I still want to make sure that, hey, you're not hurting my feelings. This is not about me. This is about how do I get you guys to the future state in a way that people had either enjoyed themselves, they felt nothing, it was nice and easy, and the leadership is happy with the results. So yeah, I take myself out of it. It's nothing to do with me. I'm there to throw ideas, give you opportunities to choose what you want to do. And I would say Tioli, take it or leave it.
I love that. I've never heard that acronym spelled out like that. I absolutely love that. I'm going to use that, Renee. I want to ask you this because as a fellow tech junkie, you and I definitely have this in common. So I've had my Tesla for quite some time now, and living in Los Angeles, everybody seems to have a Tesla, and I love technology. So I figured why not get in on all the hype? And I've loved my car over the past 6 years now. I think I've had it, but throughout that way, obviously it's changed a lot. And that's the beauty of having a car that is so technology based, is that the car that I drive today has so many new features and it does things, and autopilot has developed over the past 6 years. But what I've noticed about the way that Tesla rolls these things out is incrementally. And so, for example, the user interface has changed completely since I bought the car, but I notice it because I'm a tech junkie that one week I'll get in my car and I'll be like, they changed the font. They changed it so subtly, and most people wouldn't notice that. And Renee, I always strategically question, do they do these subtle changes to the point where people adjust with that change over time incrementally, versus what would things look like, when Apple launches iOS 18 and it's rip the Band-Aid off. There's all new features. Siri looks completely differently. What's your take on those two different styles of rolling out change?
You know what? That's such a great question. And, I think there's the two sides of the pie, right? Well, maybe there's three slices. There's that slice I gave earlier about the bank, which is tell them in advance, get everybody ready, remind them, do it, remind them, And then to your point, it's just rolling things out quietly. That's really agile, where it's just a small incremental change. People should not have to be freaking out over it. A lot of times it's not even an extra click. It might just be, to your point, a font change where they notice something different. But then it's the Apple side, which is like, just experience the change, try it out. They give you their little cheat sheet of what's changed or what's new. And it's up to you as the consumer to then go and try out all of the different new functionalities that they provided. So definitely different approaches. Good, bad, or indifferent. I think it comes with your clientele, right? So again, I'm a change person and I love let them know, give them advance warning, make them aware, because the stuff that I'm doing, especially like a systems change, it is critical to the masses of users that are within a business. Now you'd say, hey, that's exactly like Apple, but we are the consumers of a tool. We already have it in our disposal. We already have the phone. We're using it every single day. They're telling us in advance, hey, by the way, the next version is going to have A, B, C, and D. Oh, your pictures are going to look sharper. This is going to be, faster. And so we have that bit of information. But then when you actually open the phone and they tell you what's new, there's a whole slew of other stuff that you're like, wait a minute, I didn't know all that was changing too. But again, that brings a different set of endorphins for a user, because it's now the pleasant surprise of new things, right? So there's that balance of your world is changing. It's critical that you learn this. There's going to be some rumblings versus subtlety versus, the clientele has gotten used to how we roll things out. We can continue in that method of change.
Yeah, Renee, I'll tell you what, even just hearing the way that you navigate all of these considerations, because really that's what it is. You called it out, good, bad, or indifferent. It's not up for us to decide. Change is change. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's literally just that consideration set of the end user, which you hit the nail on the head. And I'll call Apple out a little bit because every time there's a major iOS update, inevitably I get those texts from my parents saying, Brian, how do we do all these things that we got so used to doing? But you're right. It's all about giving people the right resources. Apple a few years ago started, I think you directly called it out, the What's New app, where when you open your phone, it walks you through with diagrams. So huge kudos to you for thinking about all these different variables, Renee. Obviously, you're amazing at what you do, so it comes naturally to you. But I do want to, while I've got you here on today's episode, we need to talk about your book, Beyond Devil's Forest, A Tale of Choice and Consequence. I think it's brilliant, the way that you've weaved these real life considerations into a story. Please, you can talk about it better than anyone else on the planet. Talk to us about our listeners about your book.
Yeah, it was just really a little passion project. I had started this book years and years and years ago, and it was more of a short story. If you ask anybody, know that I love to try something once. Once I do it, then I'm good. And I always said I wanted to write a book, but this was started off as a short story. I am not one of those people who reads like 500-page books. Like, my book needs to be this thin. So, I thought I would just write a short story. And I love to do a cruise. So I'm a Floridian by heart sometimes. But when I come down, I did a cruise, a 45-day cruise after a long project. And I said, you know what? I'm going to finish this book on this cruise. And as I grabbed the manuscript and I started rereading the story, I was like, oh my goodness, I could weave change management into this story and just make it almost like a pre-read, and also a resemblance of what change could look like in anybody's life. And it really talks to the different types of people when you talk about change. So in any situation, you'll have the early adopters who are like, yes, let's go, let's do it. I love it. I love change. Then you'll find the people who are going to resist, right? Everything's evil and everybody's against you and they don't want to do it. And then you'll find the people who will be in the middle. They're like, okay, let's see how the wave's turning. Is this a good thing for us to do? Should we go ahead and do it? And you'll have those people in the middle. And it's really about how in my story, I have these little villages that all have to make that decision to move into the lair, so to speak, where the king lives, because in between all their villages, there is the Devil's Forest, and in there are a bunch of very bad people called Grigogs, and they are moving more and more out of the forest and infiltrating the villages. And the king is basically saying, hey, come live in the kingdom. You'll be safe. I'll give you everything you need to survive. And so you have that wrestling of people going, yeah, let's go. And the other people are going, no, I'm staying here. But when we go into the kingdom, he's going to tax us. And, so trying to turn everybody else. And then the third group is like, well, maybe, I don't know. So long story short story long, as they say in the Caribbean. I do that for people to recognize themselves in the story and how they respond to change and the consequences of not changing. So that happens in the workplace, and it also happens in real life. So there's opportunities missed, there's opportunities gained, and it was just a fun little project.
Yeah, and it's absolutely brilliant, Renee. When I came across your book as part of my research for today's episode, I thought to myself, it's so brilliant because all of us will see ourselves in those stories and we'll immediately be able to draw those parallels and those analogies with our own lives and our own attitudes. So thank you for that overview. And I also want to transition while we've got you here to talk to you not only as a subject matter expert, but like I said, as one of us, a fellow entrepreneur who's been at it for 10 years. Talk to us about some of those changes, maybe some of the changes that you imagined, as well as the many unforeseen changes, because 10 years in business, Renee, is incredible, and let there be many tens of more years in your future. So talk to us about that transition and the changes along the way.
Yes, let me give you a first one. feast and famine. So as an entrepreneur, especially as a consultant, you will come across periods of feast, so lots of opportunities, multiple clients, and then you will have like the COVID era where there was famine. So a lot of companies, were either canceling projects or closing them down, and consultants like myself were like, "Oh no, we need to work," and there's always, as an entrepreneur, you have to prepare for those periods. So, when you're flying high and your clients are coming in, you're making some good money, you're banking that money, you're reinvesting it into your company, but you're saving it for the rainy day, because it's so surprising how it comes upon you, and it just surprises you, going, "Oh wait, I didn't even think that was going to happen either so soon or for so long." And you come out of it, and then you learn, and then you're like, "Okay, let's make sure that the next time we do A, B, and C." So feast and famine is a big one. On the good side, I think it is just being able to have repeat clients. I just love that. My goal, and it's kind of like my brand, as I have continued to build it and shape it and soften the edges, has always been to deliver value, keeping it simple, keeping it fun, building relationships. Like most of my clients, I think in almost all of my clients, there's at least one or two people that I could go to their pool and hang out and have wine or have dinner with, right? So the intent is that you never know when they might come across somebody who needs change management support, or they might need it again in another organization that they move to. So I've always found that has always been such a great a blessing to just have repeat clients in the least likely times that you expect.
Yes, gosh, Renee, this is the real stuff. I so appreciate it, because really what you've put on full display for us here today is your attitude. And it's something I teased at the very beginning of this episode, but it's just your attitude towards change, whether it's good, whether it's challenging. We've seen here today that you're just always willing to navigate those waters. And I so appreciate that about you, and I appreciate it for you. So Renee, I have no idea how you're going to top all of this wealth of knowledge that you've already brought to us in today's episode, but I always love asking this broad question at the end, which is, what's the one takeaway, that one piece of advice, knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their growth journey? What's that one thing that you want to impart on them at the end of today's episode?
Believe it or not, I'm going to say rest. Which is like totally counterintuitive based on everybody scrambling to get their business up and running. At the end of the day, yes, go out, start your business, do what you love, pick what you want to do, refine it, get your clients, do great work, build relationships, do all of that. But don't forget, as entrepreneurs, you need to also rest. And I like to have it in 4 phases. I like rest, assess, refresh, and then progress. And once you start your resting, it really is setting aside the work. I work by myself, so it's easy enough for me to basically, close the shingles down and take some time. But for those who have a business where you have employees, it's really empowering your employees to handle the business while you are taking your rest, right? And that is mental, physical, it's spiritual, emotional. Gather yourself, really just decompress. That's, again, going back to my cruises. I love to plan a cruise when I know my project is coming to a close, because it's something to look forward to, and I know I'll be able to really relax at that time. That rolls then into assess. And now I've had a chance to rest. I'm going to look back now and assess that last project and go, what did I really enjoy about it? What didn't I like so much? And what would I do differently the next time? Because that really helps shape, again, we're always reshaping our business, curving the edges, and being able to say, well, okay, if I ever come across another opportunity, I'm not going to sell in this activity because I really didn't enjoy it. Or because if it's necessary for your business, then how do you smooth it out so that it could be tolerable, right? So again, assessing what worked, what didn't work, what would you do differently? Then I get into refresh. So, okay, now it's time. You got to get ready for the next opportunity. How do you refresh yourself? Get ready, get hyped, get your energy back. And for me, that's tennis. I love tennis. I'm a doubles player. So I'm always, anytime I can get out on the courts, I love it. And that gets me really hyped and ready to go. And then finally, progress. Move on to your next project. Smarter, stronger, and still, willing to learn something new, because at the end of the day, that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We're constantly learning. And again, let's try and do something again in the new year. Let's share with another entrepreneur something that we've learned so that we can constantly help building each other's up as well.
Boom. Renee, you have set such a high bar for all of our content here in 2025. And I'll say this while we're on the air. Normally I say it after we're done recording, but I'll just tell you this. I always love telling my guests that, hey, we're going to have a coffee one day in person together, but I'm not going to extend that offer to you, Renee, because you and I, we got to play some doubles and we both need to be at the net and we need to dominate our opponents. I'm looking forward to that day, especially. So Renee, honestly, you've been such a wealth of knowledge. The energy you put into the world is something that I knew you'd bring to our episode here today. And I'm so grateful for that. So listeners who want to navigate these waters with you or have a conversation with you, you've got to drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, my website is janusmanagementgroup.com, JANUS, management group, all one word, .com. Please send me an email through there. I also have like a little YouTube channel, Renée Holder. That's a little side project that I did during COVID as well. But yeah, please reach out. Glad to chat, glad to give advice, and cheer everybody on.
Yes, listeners, don't be shy. Wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, we are putting those links down below in the show notes. You can click right on through to janusmanagementgroup.com, or both Renee and myself are looking for doubles opponents. So don't be shy. Coast to coast, anywhere on the East Coast, we're there. But Renee, in all seriousness, I so appreciate you not only kicking off a new year of content here on the show, but I appreciate all the knowledge you've shared with us, the energy you bring to the table. So on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. This was so awesome. You guys are awesome.